Welcome to the Exodus and Beyond. I'm your host, author R.J. von-Bruening. In this video series, we'll be exploring the Exodus from an esoteric understanding, as explored in my book, The Exodus and Beyond, Book 2 of Unlocking the Dream Vision. In this video, we'll return to the Land of Canaan, Part 2. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like button below and subscribe for future videos. This series presents information based in part upon theory and conjecture of the system of esoteric symbolism. The purpose is to suggest some possible interpretation, but not necessarily the only one to the many mysteries we will explore. In this video, we'll return to the Land of Canaan and take a look at the next important historical information that we have about these ancient people, which comes centuries later from the Assyrian Empire, which were the only other Bronze Age people outside of the Egyptians that were able to resist these Indo-European speaking children of Israel as they moved around the world in their great exodus under the leadership of the twin brothers. It appears the primary reason the Assyrians were able to resist the tribes was simply because the Assyrians were much more brutal than the Israelites ever were. We have ample evidence and numerous stone reliefs that celebrate the Assyrian king's great deeds that repeat the gruesome tale of sacking, enslavement, impalement, torture, and the final solution of mass deportation and enslavement of conquered peoples. The entire Assyrian Empire was built upon this brutal foundation of conquest and sheer intimidation of the people they conquered. They also created one of the best armies the world had ever seen up to that time. This army was fed by conscription of all able-bodied males and armed with iron weapons and siege military artillery. They could also breach city walls that were thought to be impregnable up until this time. This army also included some mailed armored cavalry with an effective command and control that coordinated this movement across the battlefield. It is believed that the Assyrians had a religious fever behind their conquests, with their god Assur commonly being shown floating above their armies as they went into battle against the unbelievers. We also have additional information from Hieronymus's histories that the tribes that lived in the valleys of the Zagros Mountains and across the Iranian Plateau at this time. However, it should be noted that both the Assyrians and Hieronymus sources are viewed as highly biased, with much of the information being little more than propaganda designed to demonize these people. Although these sources are very biased against these people and the later Persians, scholars and historians, with the help of surrounding cultures, have reconstructed some of the history of these somewhat mysterious people with a little bit of confidence. According to the Syrians, the people who lived in these lands were known as the Medes and who spoke the Median language. As with the Proto-Indo-European language, we don't know what this Median language actually was, for no writing has ever survived except for a few names. The Assyrians' earliest records present the Medes as little more than a small vassal state to the much larger Assyrian Empire that was made up of various small tribes scattered across the Iranian Plateau and the countless valleys of the Zagros Mountains. However, although they were thought of as a vassal state, the Assyrians actually never directly ruled these people, and they did pay tribute to the Assyrians. The Assyrians' records also commonly report that they had to send troops to the border areas with these Median tribes, primarily to protect the vastly important east-west trade route that ran through the northern Iran at this time. A trade route that would one day become known as the Silk Road. In time, the Assyrian kings imposed vassal treaties upon the numerous tribes of the Medes in return to protect them from the other many predatory peoples, primarily the Scythians and the Samaritans in the area. For some unknown reason, but possibly due to political actions of the more powerful societies that surrounded them, the 6 largest Median tribes came together and united under the banner of one king. Hieronymus called this first king Diaeses, known to the Median people as a just and incorruptible man. According to Hieronymus, and from his histories, this king acted much like a judge as recorded in the Bible. Hieronymus recounts that a young man who was asked by the leaders and elders of the 6 largest Median tribes to solve their disputes, which he readily agreed to, but only upon the condition that they made him king, which the tribes is said to have quickly agreed to. Although King Dionysius united the many tribes of the Medes into one independent kingdom and fought many battles against the Assyrians, the Medes were still in many ways little more than a vassal state to the much larger and more powerful Assyrian Empire, with the Medes still sending a yearly tribute to the Assyrians. However, unlike before, this tribute wasn't really sent to Assyria for protection from the marauding tribes of the Scythians or the Samaritans, but it was now to keep the Assyrians out of Median lands. Even under the watchful and often brutal eye of the Assyrians, this King Dionysius was able to expand the newly formed Median kingdom's borders at the expense of the Assyrians. Much of this expansion was primarily in the lands of the south and east from the Assyrians' direct control. Soon after the tribes were formed into the Median state, the king began constructing his capital city at Ecbatana, which means the place of gathering. It is situated in northwestern Iran. Scholars believe that the ruins found in and around the modern-day Iranian city of Hamadan are the remains of this ancient capital city. According to Hieronymus, this king ruled for 53 years, and upon his death, his eldest son, Pharos, assumed the throne. We know next to nothing about this son, Pharos, the man or his rule. We do know that he, like his father, started wars against the Assyrians and expanded the borders of the Median kingdom by subjecting the other Persian tribes in the area, along with many tribes of the Parthians. We also know that he had to deal with several internal quarrels, and he was not very well liked by his subjects. After 22 years of rule, he was defeated and killed on the battlefield by King Ashurbanipal of the Assyrian Empire. Upon his death, the Median tribes were then invaded by the Scythians, who controlled the area for about 20 or so years. During this time, the Scythians conquered the area. A man Hieronymus called Cyaxares, or the good ruler, who longed for revenge against the Scythians, came to power. He somehow managed to organize a force that was large enough and powerful enough that were able to kill the leaders of the Scythians, thereby forcing them from Median lands. After expelling the Scythians, Cyaxares proclaimed himself king of all the Medes. After defeating the Scythians, he also began preparing for war against the Assyrian Empire. In the process, King Cyaxares reorganized his entire army, becoming the first military commander in history to divide his troops into separate specialized sections of spearmen, archers, stone throwers, bowmen, and heavy cavalry with armored horses that were supported by a highly trained infantry that were then armed with advanced bronze and iron weapons. He was also the first military commander to break each of these specialized sections into individual units with their own command and control, thus greatly reducing the chances that the entire section would break apart if its commander was killed in battle. By anybody's standards, King Cyaxares was a great military mind that still influences how we organize our armies to this very day. After reorganizing his army, he allied with the king of Babylon, who was a mutual enemy of Assyria. This alliance was formalized through the marriage of King Cyaxares' daughter, Amratus, to the son of the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar II. Nebuchadnezzar II is famous for building the Hanging Gardens of Babylon so his beloved wife would not feel so homesick for her homeland of the mountains and forests that she grew up with. Soon after forming this alliance, Hieronymus tells us that King Cyaxares united most of the remaining small feuding tribes into a fully unified state. The few tribes that resisted his rule, which were normally in the far-reaching surrounding territories, he eventually conquered, thereby transforming the entire Median kingdom into a Median empire, becoming a regional and world power. He even formed a new alliance with the Scythians, and even though they had battled each other just a few decades earlier, at this point, King Cyaxares, with the aid of the forces of the king of Babylon through the marriage of his daughter, and the Scythians, he was able to conquer the Assyrians, and soon after he sacked and destroyed their capital city. Although there is no doubt about Cyaxares' military might, much of this victory was because the Assyrian Empire was already in a state of collapse, with much of their mighty empire crumbling in many parts of the area, and were more or less in some general state of revolt when King Cyaxares' armies fell upon them. After King Cyaxares had conquered the Assyrians, he, like so many other rulers, began undertaking large building projects, constructing roads, and to basically unite his people from this now far-flung empire. All known accounts present this King Cyaxares not only as a great military leader, but he was also thought of as a good king and an excellent statesman that was beloved by his people. Even the people he conquered appeared to have the utmost respect for the man, with no known reports of them ever being a revolt while under his rule. A large part of King Cyaxares' power came from the priesthood of the Median people, known as the Magi, that he strongly supported by giving them special rights and protections. He also provided them with a workforce to build Tepi-Nesh-e-Jan, a site which was located approximately 31 miles to the south of the Median capital, located in northwestern Iran upon a small hill that overlooks the surrounding area. This was the primary site of the Magi's leadership, as with the biblical tribe of Levi. All the priests came from one Median tribe, known as the tribe of Magi. That provided the priests for the Median Empire and even the later Persians. They made up the priestly caste, which then passed their religious functions from father to son. These Magi played a significant role in the Median court, where they were advisors, dream interpreters, soothsayers, and prophets to the king and his court. According to Hieronymus, after a very successful reign of 53 years, the king passed away and was succeeded by his son, Astyages. As with his grandfather, almost nothing is known for this King Astyages, his reign, or the man himself. The ancient sources that we do have are obviously very biased against the man, with Hieronymus painting the man as a cruel, despotic ruler, while Citius accounts portray him as a caring, kind king that was beloved by his people. Other accounts fall somewhere between these two extremes, making it next to impossible to make any type of actual judgment about him or his reign. We do know that soon after assuming the throne, he began losing control of the lands that his father, his grandfather, and great-grandfather had conquered. By the end of his 32-year reign, the mighty Median Empire was but a former shadow of itself, only ruling over the traditional lands of the original 6 Median tribes that were first united under King Dionysius. Based on this information alone, it appears that King Astyages may have been closer to the cruel and despotic ruler that Hieronymus presents in his histories. We also know that when he assumed the throne, he inherited a large and mighty empire that he ruled in alliance with 2 brother-in-laws, King Croesus of the kingdom of Lydia and King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. As with his father, these alliances were based upon marriage, with him marrying Artias, the daughter of King Hieronymus. The Babylonian alliance was due to Nebuchadnezzar's marriage to Astyages' sister, Amytis. Nevertheless, this alliance appears to have been very weak and was quickly broken soon after the king took the throne. The breaking of this alliance seems to also support the idea that he may have been a despotic king or ruler. Classical historians typically accept the account of Xenophon, although Xenophon's account of King Astyages is no more reliable than any other ancient sources we have. With that said, it does appear to add some information about the end of his rule, and strangely, as we will explore in the next video, he also presents Cyrus the Great as the grandson of this king, which according to Xenophon results in the founding of the mighty Persian Empire by Cyrus. Although we do not know the circumstances surrounding his death, Xenophon claims that he ruled for 32 years of relative stability. King Astyages lost his noble support during a war against his grandson Cyrus when he was captured by Cyrus, or as the story goes. As with all of the other accounts we have that differ from Ziophon in some, the captured king was treated with clemency, and others he was imprisoned, while others he was murdered. Although there is much we do not know about this king, there is one point that all the ancient accounts do agree upon, and that this king Astyages had embraced and was in fact a very devout follower of a new religion that was very similar to a religion of Zoroastrianism, but with a slightly different doctrine. It has also been proposed that his father, King Cyaxares, may also have followed this similar religion derived from Zoroaster's teachings. This is because it's highly probable that King Cyaxares is the man responsible for constructing a mysterious temple site known only as Tahak-e-Solomon, which means Throne of Solomon. This mysterious site is located approximately 150 miles northwest of the city of Hamadan, near the present-day town of Takapa, Iran. Like I said, I hope I pronounced that right. This site sits in a broad valley with a large rectangular platform-like structure about 197 feet above the surrounding plain at its center. The site itself measures approximately 350 meters, or 1,150 feet, by 550 meters, or 1,800 feet. Remarkably, these dimensions are very close to the ones given in the Bible for the outer courtyard of King Solomon's temple, which are given at approximately being 244 meters, 800 feet, by 488 meters, or 1,600 feet. At one time, a large building stood upon the site, but today, located where the original platform that this building stood upon, there is a small lake fed by springs hidden beneath the surface. The water itself is saturated with minerals and heavy metals, making the water undrinkable and so toxic that no life can actually exist in it. An ancient volcano located approximately 3 kilometers or 1.8 miles to the west of the site, which is also named the Prison of Solomon, is believed to be feeding the site's springs. According to local folklore, King Solomon used the volcano to imprison monsters and demons inside its 100-meter deep or 328-foot deep crater, which is believed to have been filled with water at that ancient time. Given the stunning natural landscape, the entire area must have been perceived as a mystical site by these ancient people. What is truly remarkable about this mysterious site is that everything about this entire place is either named after or related to the biblical King Solomon and his first temple. There has also been numerous temples and other shrines discovered scattering the area, which are also all claimed to be related to King Solomon or his temple in some manner. Many of them date back thousands and thousands upon years, with modern archaeologists and scholars having no actual explanation why the site is named after or related to King Solomon or his temple. However, as we've been learning, the answer to this mystery is simply because this is part of the ancient land of Canaan. This knowledge allows us to begin understanding that this site could be the original location of King Solomon's temple. For us to do this, we must take a few moments and explore not only this strange site of this Throne of Solomon, but we also must take a look at the priesthood of the Magi and the Zoroastrian faith. Classical historians have claimed for years that the Magi are the priests only of Zoroastrianism only. They've always been that way. They believe that this site was actually originally built by and for the Zoroastrian priesthood, and it was during the King of Kings, Cyaxares, with the final construction of the site being completed by his son. Nevertheless, as we've already learned, the original Proto-Indo-European people that settled the area and the later Indo-European people that practiced a polytheistic religion based around sacrifice of the gods actually lived in this area. This understanding of the original religion of the people allows us to begin realizing that the faith that's known as Zoroastrianism was not and could not have been the Magi's original belief system. This would also mean that the Magi then adopted the religion we know as Zoroastrianism during the reign of King Xerxes, or the reign of his son. However, before we can understand how and why this might have happened, we must first look at the man remembered as Zoroaster and the religion he founded. This will also allow us to learn how and why this traditional religion of Zoroastrianism might be why King Astyages lost his noble support and why the Median Empire began to crumble under his rule. Zoroaster was an ancient spiritual leader who founded the religion known as Zoroastrianism. We know very little about the actual man, and we don't actually know when he may have lived. Scholars have placed his life anywhere from the 700 BC to the 6th century BC. We also do not know where he was born, but it is believed that it was somewhere in the far eastern parts of the Iranian Plateau. Nevertheless, Zoroaster is recorded as being part of the Spitaman clan of the Dungbao tribe, with it being said that his great-grandfather was a chief. However, it is unknown if any of this information is actually true. It is also said that he had 4 brothers, 2 younger and 2 older, and this information and their names come from a much later source, from probably the 3rd or 2nd century BC. But according to Zoroaster tradition, Zoroaster is said to have began his training for the priesthood around age 7. According to the Gotras, which are the 17 Assyrian hymns believed to have actually been composed by Zoroaster himself, he became a full priest around the age of 15 or 16. He claimed that he had gained secret knowledge from other mystical and religious teachers when he left the household of his parents at the age of 20 and began traveling around the Median lands, visiting each of the other tribes. This traditional belief that Zoroaster was trained as a priest of the Magi while also becoming a priest at such a young age is actually quite mysterious. Because, as we have already learned, the tribe of the Magi provided all the priests for the Medians and later Persians, and there is no known historical or archaeological evidence that supports the idea that Zoroaster was part of the tribe of the Magi. This alone would have made Zoroaster an outsider who would have been viewed as a false priest or heretical teacher by the Magi Priesthood. This is our first clue to us understanding for the first time that the claims that Zoroaster was trained as a priest must be false, with it being used to provide a legitimate claim or connection to the Magi Priesthood. Around age 30, Zoroaster claimed to have experienced a vision and a grand revelation during a spring festival. It was this grand vision that would later become the template for all other claimed visions and revelations of later religious teachers and cult leaders, including those of today. Zoroaster claimed that while standing on the bank of a river, he saw a great shining being who revealed himself as Vana Mana, or the good purpose, and revealed the knowledge of Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, the supreme God of the world and all of creation, along with the 5 other figures of light. He also learned of the destructive spirit known as Argana Mavana, the terrible enemy of Ahura Mazda and the great order of creation. From this vision and further revelations, Zoroaster developed a new and highly complex theology, which then openly rejected the polytheistic belief of many gods. He then broke the great gods into 2 separate groups, with one being known as the Ashra, which represent the order and righteous behavior, while the other being the Dura, which represent the destruction and rule of the evil ones. Over many centuries, these 2 categories of divine beings became known and remembered as angels and demons within the biblical tradition. He also began teaching about individual judgment of the individual person based upon the actions of their life. He developed the basic ideas that would later become the concepts of heaven and hell, the resurrection of the physical body, the last judgment, and of everlasting life of the reunited soul and body, all of which depended upon the behavior of the individual in this life. He essentially created the first human-centered religious belief that was not focused on the whims of the gods, but of man's own free will and choices. All his teachings are believed to be contained within the Gathras, the holy writings of Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster also openly rejected and publicly condemned the mass sacrifice of animals to the gods as a cruel and brutal practice. He also openly opposed the use of mind-altering drugs that the Magi Priesthood used during their rituals. His complex theology and religious teachings borrowed heavily upon what we know of the early Abrahamic religions. It was often claimed that Zoroaster was trying to return the people to the original religion and worship of the one true God, which he referred to as Arthur Mazda. As one can imagine, these new and radical teaching of Zoroaster were not very well received by either the Magi or the Median people as a whole. Eventually, around the age of 42, Zoroaster made his most important conversions, where he converted the queen and king of the far eastern kingdom of Bakrania into the religion of Zoroastrianism. They actually provided him with the patronage and the protection that allowed Zoroaster to establish a highly faithful community and devout believers that would then move across the Median lands, prophesizing the new religion after he passed away. According to tradition, Zoroaster lived to be the age of about 77 under the protection of the king and queen. However, some sources claim that he was murdered by a Capripan, or a priest of the old religion. What is truly remarkable is that the religion of Zoroastrianism did not die with its founder. Much like Christianity would later, it expanded and spread among many different people through his devout followers after his death. There's a great appeal in its strict doctrine and code of behavior that focused on the individual and their choices instead of blindly serving the gods or earthly rulers. This strict code of behavior governed how the individual dressed, ate, worked, and most importantly of all, how they worshiped the one true and only God. Although the Magi initially resisted Zoroaster's teachings and his new religion, they quickly adopted it in a remarkably short amount of time, possibly in less than one generation. By all accounts, once Zoroastrianism had appeared, it quickly and completely took over the Magi priesthood of the Medes. Once it had taken over the priesthood, it quickly became the primary belief of all the Median people throughout the empire. Soon after the reign of King Astrages, until the coming of Cyrus the Great, the religion of Zoroastrianism, with its strict reforms and doctrines, spread with remarkable speed across the western lands and the Medes and into the surrounding lands, with it displacing all the original religious beliefs of the Median tribes. As you've no doubt already noticed, there are several parallels between the biblical story of the first four kings of the kingdom of Israel and the first four kings of the Medes. Additionally, there are also parallels between the priesthood of the Magi and the priesthood of Levi spoken of the Bible, and that this is our first hint that Zoroastrianism could be the corrupting factor of the original polytheistic belief that was put into place by the events of the Exodus. In our next video, we will explore this religion of Zoroastrianism and how it ultimately ties into an entirely new understanding of the Exodus, the kingdom of Israel, and in a way never before imagined. It will also answer many of the mysteries surrounding King Solomon's temple and citadel, and the few lingering mysteries that are still present from our journey through the dream vision of Enoch. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below and don't forget to subscribe for future videos.